Peace and welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Barris. Thank you so much for tuning in and wanting to be a part of the conversation. First and foremost, folks, let's talk about the poison of white supremacy. Another mass shooting has happened in this country, and there have already been over 200 mass shootings so far this year. We'll give you the latest around that shooting down in Texas. We'll talk a little bit about that. Also, let's talk about the latest with the California Reparations Task Force, how they met over the weekend in Oakland, and it seems to be moving along, folks. We'll have the discussion about that. Also, we're going to be checking in with our very own Dr. Bridget, MD, for this week's Reclaim Your Wellness segment, and so much more. So stay with us. There's a whole lot happening on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. Folks, welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Faraji Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Happy Monday, folks. I hope you enjoyed your weekend. I sure did. So big shout out to everybody that just offered a little bit of little well wishes for me on the birthday. I truly appreciate your crew. Thank you. And I'm looking forward to the new chapter. So there it is right there. Folks, we got a lot to talk about. First and foremost, let's talk about the situation that has happened over the weekend in Texas, talking about that tragedy, another mass shooting. This time, 8 people were killed and at least 7 others were wounded when a gunman had opened fire at an Allen, Texas outlet mall on Saturday afternoons. And this is according to latest local officials. Take a look at this here, folks. This is the report coming from CNN. As information is still coming in about what happened, what would cause the man to open fire the way that Mr. Marcio Garcia had opened fire on folks. And according to the latest reports, he was killed by police on the scene. So 8 people were killed, at least 7 others wounded. The shooter, who was killed by police outside the mall, has been identified as a 33-year-old man. A senior law enforcement source told CNN the gunman was armed with an AR-15 style rifle. According to the source, the investigators are looking into his potential extremist ties based on his social media presence and an insignia on his clothing, according to the law enforcement official. There have already been more than 200 mass shootings in the U.S. so far this year, just within the first 5 months of the year, according to the Gun Violence Archives. And this is the group that is keeping track of these mass shootings. Over 200 this year, folks. And that speaks volumes about where we are around the conversation about gun control, gun reform, just the possession of guns in general. So we're looking at another unfortunate situation that has claimed the lives of 8 people in Texas, injuring 7. And this situation, of course, in this small town of Allen, Texas, has rattled some folks. There are some thoughts around the shooter's background. Again, this is 33-year-old Mauricio Garcia. There was some insight that he may have been motivated by potential extremist ties. According to the investigation, authorities are investigating whether the shooter was motivated by right-wing extremism. He was wearing that insignia, including being a part of social media conversations where neo-Nazis and white supremacists have often posted. So we're looking at this poison of white supremacy, and more importantly, how this poison of white supremacy has affected all these people around the country. And I'm going to just go say, folks, that this whole situation, this whole conversation is just sad, absolutely sad. The word is, and this is coming from some other sources, that local police and federal law officials believe that the shooter, he rampaged through a crowded Texas mall outlet, leaving at least 9 people dead. This is the latest around this as we're seeing it. And again, this investigation is open. Information is still coming through. And he started shooting randomly. Now, the question becomes like, who is this guy? Was this is this something that just happens out of the blue? Was there a connection? There hasn't been any information about who Mauricio Garcia is and his views, just to know the fact that he has been influenced by white supremacy. Rolling Stone reported that the FBI review and triage of the subject's social media accounts revealed hundreds of postings and images to include writings. This is from Rolling Stone, and Keenan, if we could put this up on the bottom. But it said that they have revealed hundreds of postings and images, writings with racially or ethnically motivated violent extremist rhetoric, including neo-Nazi materials and materials espousing the supremacy of the white race, according to a bulletin from Rolling Stone. So this is a real problem. That's why, and Keenan, also, we can change the, I wanted to say, of course, there's a mass shooting in Texas, but I want to talk about the poison of white supremacy. And sometimes people don't want to have this conversation, or the conversation is sometimes outside of ourselves. But folks, if we start to see this idea that white people are better, white people are more superior, or there's this very distorted view of the value of the emphasis placed on one's skin color, right? This is a problem for America, folks. Now we're seeing, can we, as we have these conversations, and I'm not saying that all mass shootings are racially motivated, but I bet you if we were to look at those 200 plus shootings, which I wonder who would have, who would be in that category of ones who are influenced by white supremacist views. So that's the big thing. Who would be who was influenced to create situations or to be violent, and they were influenced by white supremacy. And this is the big thing that I want us to talk about. Let me check in and let me see. We're waiting on, but we're going to be joined. We should be joined hopefully by my brother, Dr. Jason Nichols, as we have this conversation. But crew, I want you to post your thoughts on this because all I see is that people are drinking this Kool-Aid of white supremacy, and it has gone so far. And I'm saying it's not just that it has affected Black people, a Latino, and the Hispanic community. This has even affected white people on a fundamental. Every group of people that live in the borders of this country have been affected by the poison of white supremacy, and that's why we're seeing these mass shootings. Kind of more and more and more people are being driven. I think there are a couple of things happening where folks are either being driven to go into extremist views, or folks are starting to create like their own personal rebellion as a result of their disdain for this level of hatred. And so, crew, I want you to post your thoughts. We're going to take a quick pause, but I want you to post your thoughts. Let me know what's your take on this as we're talking about this latest shooting in Texas. Is this do you see this as being the problem? The poison of white supremacy. The poison of white supremacy. And the fact that we're in 2023 and it is becoming more and more violent and more horrendous speaks volumes about the great work that needs to be done still in this country. We're going to have that conversation when we get back. Stay with us, more conversation with you and a whole lot more discussion around this situation in Texas. You're tuned into The Culture right here on the Black Star Network.
hatred on the streets. A horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Faraji Muhammad. We've been having a conversation around white supremacy, the poison of white supremacy, as we're looking at this latest mass shooting in Texas over the weekend, where a 33-year-old had rushed into an outlet mall in Allen, Texas, killing 9 people and injuring many more. He was eventually shot on the scene by another officer who just happened to be in the outlet mall, but he was shot and killed. And it's now the investigation as to what happened down in Allen, Texas. They have found that this Mr. Mauricio Garcia was consuming information about right-wing extremism, consuming information about neo-Nazism, white supremacy and white nationalist information. And this may have led to him making a move this deadly. I want to get your take on this, folks, as we talk about this poison, how it can imbalance the thinking of any individual who takes it in. Join me in a conversation. Post your thoughts on Facebook and on YouTube as we're streaming now and there. And of course, we're streaming on blackstarnetwork.com and Amazon News. All right, let me go to Corinna. You kicked this off today. Corinna, you said, my sister, you said, Roland is right. People of conscience must vote. 75% of Texans under 30 did not vote in the last election, yet I'm sure complain about what's going on. 75%. I didn't look at the numbers, Corinna, but that's a lot. That's a lot. And I'm glad that you bring up that point that, you know, you can't complain about something if you're not willing to change it. Can I say that again for the church? You can't complain about something unless you're willing to change, unless you're willing to do something different than we have been doing because of whatever the case may be. We got to do something different in this country and do something different with this conversation. It can't just be gun control, gun reform, mental health, hate act, you know, some type of violence, hatred and violence. It can't just be these normal things. 200 mass shootings. People are so upset. People are so angry. People are so distorted in their thinking and so have been imbalanced by what they see happening in this country that they're now looking to take it to violent means to try to address it. Even though it doesn't address it, it actually only adds more trauma. It adds more pain to the conversation. All right, let's go back to what you got to say, crew. Davey, good to hear from you, man. Davey Floater, you said, remember the Buffalo shooter pulled up a Nazi regalia from the Ukrainian Azov battalion? This stuff is always connected to the military and gun manufacturing. Military and gun manufacturing. The military is something. What is going on in the military? Maybe we need to have a conversation about this, crew. Maybe we should have a conversation about what is going on with the military today in the sense of how it is addressing the social justice question, the race question in this country. We just had another military man deal with the situation in New York, right? We don't know what the background, I mean, that information is still being gathered. Does he have military ties along with his extremist ties? I mean, what is going on with that part of the discussion? So, Davey, that's a great point. Gun manufacturing, we know. Gun lobbyists is one of the biggest lobbyists in the country. They lobby political officials. The NRA is they don't hide from who they're willing to put their support behind. The political officials who stand with the NRA don't hide from where their support is coming from. So we're looking at a situation where it's out in plain view. And in spite of having 200 plus mass shootings in the first 5 months, the GOP, the Republicans, they're not saying they're going to do something really substantive with gun laws. They're not going to really address that. They're not. We're not having a conversation about guns. The moment we do have a conversation about guns, then people start to say, what? Oh, this is against my rights. Oh, you're trying to, go back, roll back on the Constitution. Oh, this was something that, we were privileged to have. But what about the victims? What about the shootings? What about the volatile mix of the poison of white supremacy, having access to guns, living in a state that you can, that pretty much justifies you to walk around with a gun with the stand your ground law and open carry laws, right? What about all of these things that when you mix them together create the perfect storm for human massacre? What about that? Okay, just bringing up some points. Real Brooklyn, my guy, you checked it and said, Faraji, mass shootings is more to do with Americans who feel entitled. And unfortunately, that includes folks who are criminals, people with mental issues, and bigots. That's a lot. That's a lot. Real Brooklyn, you on to something, bro. Entitlement, mental health, bigotry, racism, right? People who feel like that their world is falling apart. They can't handle the disappointment. They can't handle the change. All of that. I think you're right on, bro. I think you're right on. I think that's the problem. I was reading something today. No, it was over the weekend when they were talking about, and we had discussed this on the show, that in some states, the age to get guns is still, I think, like 18. You talking about these high-powered rifles. You talking about these AR-15s. You talking about these semi-automatic weapons, right? And you're talking about, imagine 18-year-old today. I'm not talking about 20 years ago's 18-year-old, but today's 18-year-old who may not have cultivated or developed their mental health capacity, develop the self-regulatory system within themselves where they can deal with certain things, deal with disappointment, deal with rejection in a healthy way where they don't have to take it to violent extremes. That's what we're dealing with. That's what we're dealing with. Good point, Real Brooklyn. Thank you. Tiana, my sister, you checked in. I don't think this is about primal urges. This is about power and causing fear. I would agree. I would agree. I don't think it's about primal urges, too. It's too premeditated for me, Tiana. It's not like, this is random. And see, the thing about this poison of white supremacy is that once you start to feed on it just long enough, it becomes so ingrained into your thinking that you lose a sense of yourself, right? You don't have control of yourself. You're seeing yourself from a colored lens. You're seeing the world from through a different lens. And it changes you. It changes you really bad. It changes you a lot. So I think that, to your point, that is absolutely true. Shalinda, you checked in and said, we're living in perilous times, aren't we? Amen, we are. Amen, we are. And we're getting to that point. And all of these things and with these conversations, which is why we wanted to bring these conversations to your attention, folks. All of these conversations is about making sure that you understand, connect the dots. If you're talking about consuming media that is of a certain ilk, if you're talking about being with yourself in terms of loneliness, if you're talking about America's intimacy problems, we don't really connect with people. Like, what are you doing? What is happening in this country? Are we creating a formula where, as much as we're talking about we're one America or we're citizens or we're neighbors, that we really have created our own demise in the sense of becoming individualized? Capitalism will individualize people. You might say, no, I'm serious. Where people have become not the end, but the means to the end, with the end being more money, or the end being a position, a status, a title, whereas the end should be people, right? That's what, as for any government, for any countries to say that this is a country of progress, this is a country of that's thriving, that's flourishing, then the people should be the one put up on the totem pole. The people, the quality of the citizens should be the one that should be praised, not its technology, not its industries, right? Not its science, but show me the people. If the people are of a certain thinking, then the country you can't say that the country is moving forward. If the people think on a low level, if the women don't think high of themselves, if the men don't think high of themselves, then how can we say that this is the best country in the world, or this is a country that is thriving, or this is a country that is outpacing the rest of the world, when the citizens are broken? The industries may be strong, the technology may be innovative and advanced, but the people that are using the technology, the people who make up the industry, broken. All right, folks, we got to take another quick pause. When we come forward, I want us to keep that in mind as we have our next conversation, which is about reparations. I'm going to share with you the latest developments of that here in the state of California and so much more. Stay with me. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We've been talking about the latest situation down in Texas and how the town of Allen, Texas is going to are now trying to recover and heal from this past weekend's tragedy of that great mass shooting down in one of their malls down there that have left 9 people dead and others injured. And so, our hearts and prayers go out to the families and our condolences go out to the victims, but to everyone that has been impacted by this mass shooting. It is certainly a great tragedy. But we will certainly keep you posted on that. Now, I wanted to keep you posted about another story, which is what we have talked about a little bit last week, which is the latest around the California Reparations Task Force. Now, this task force, folks, has been working diligently over the past couple of years to try to move the conversation about reparation, either from a state level or from a federal level, into actually happening. And so this weekend, when the task force met, they were able to make some headway around this issue of reparations. And it looks like California might be getting closer to issuing reparations to its black constituents, to those who are eligible. Now, this panel, they were created to consider talking about the California Reparations Task Force. Remember, this task force was created to vote, to try to see if this is even possible from a financial point of view, from a legislative point of view, social, economic point of view. Is this possible? Well, they met in Saturday in Oakland. It was the 15th public meeting of the Reparations Task Force to study and develop reparations proposal for African Americans. And according to their chair of the panel, Camilla Moore, these were the recommendations. I want to show you what they recommended so far, because they have moved forward to approving recommendations for the payments of reparations to Black Californians. The recommendations will be presented at the task force next meeting before being presented to the legislature by the deadline of July 1. The recommendations outline restitution, which, if approved, could cost the state billions of dollars. Among the possible estimates of reparation for Black Californians recommended by the task force are: 1, estimated value of payment for healthcare disparities, $13,619 for each year residency based on a 71-year life residence expectancy. Estimated payment for housing discrimination, you're talking about $148,000 or $3,366 for each year between 1933 and 1977 spent as a resident of the state. Estimated payment for mass incarceration and over-policing, you're talking about $115,260 or $2,352 for each year of residency in California during the 49-year period between 1971 and 2020. So you're talking a lot of money, because remember, we talked about this, folks, that this whole situation could look to cost the state about $1.2 million per Black citizen that are eligible for reparations. Now, if you also remember, the task force had provided a recommendation to call for the state office to process reparation claims and to do what they say, identify and mitigate the ways that current and previous policies have damaged and destabilized Black families, to restore historical sites, to support education, and to offer free legal aid and other services. The other recommendation that the task force is looking to have is that includes updating language in the state's constitution, removing racial bias and discriminatory practices and standardized testing, compensating people deprived of profits for their work, investing in and creating free healthcare programs, and apologizing for acts of political disenfranchisement. Wow. Wow. All right, crew, talk to me here. I want to get your take on this. And the word is, it's not clear whether the California state legislature will put all or some of the recommendations into place. But California's Black population is more than 2.5 million. Not a lot of people in one of the largest states in the country. 2.5 million Black people are in the state of California, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. All right, let me hear what you got to take on it. What's your take on this as we're talking about the reparations movement in California? All right, Janelle, you checked in and said the sooner the masses realize that, quote, we the people was never meant to include the majority of us, the sooner we can get about the business of making this nation a better place for the 99%. Right. That's true. That's true. That is true. We do have to come to that, Janelle. I agree with you. I feel like that is probably one of the unspoken parts of the conversation, which is, let's just first recognize when it says in the founding documents, we the people, it did not include Black people. It did not include Latinos. It did not include Asian Americans. It did not include marginalized communities. We the people. It didn't include the LGBTQ community. It didn't include all of these groups that are on the outskirts that have been on the fringes of social justice. It didn't include that. So if we can acknowledge, like, look, we need to have a conversation about reparations because we were not included. You can't say Black folks were included in that phrase, right, Janelle, of we the people, yet it also states in the Constitution we're 3/5 of a human being. So that already goes to show you that that's not included, that we're not a part of that. You can't just be like, no, it does mean that. No, it doesn't. Because the Constitution has also said that we aren't human. We aren't fully human. So we can't say that we're a person and then the next document says we're not a person. So no, it does not include us. But we got folks in this country who are in a place that they don't think about that. It's not important. Want to make this very clear that if the lawmakers adopted all of these recommendations, lifelong Black California residents, older than 70 would each receive more than $1 million. So I think last week we talked about there's a possibility of $1.2 million, but the point is $1 million for lifelong Black California residents older than 70. So you're talking about maybe our parents, grandparents, great-great-grandparents. They've lived in the state of California for all of their life. They would be eligible. They would be eligible according to this panel. All right, let me get some more thoughts about this. Shalinda, you said I admire California for giving reparations, and hopefully it is done on a national level. Well, yeah, I admire California for setting up a process. We ain't there yet. Shalinda. But I do admire them for setting up a process because why? It could be the model by which other states can use it. So that's why I'm looking at this, and I'm kind of, hoping that something is going to be worked out. I like the other recommendations. I want to go back to that point. I like the other recommendations. I like the recommendations about updating the state's constitution and removing racial bias and all of that. I like all of that. Now, here's the other part. And my sister Karen, I think you will understand this. You are a native of California. Karen Connor, you checked in and said liberty and justice for all meant all white people, right? We know that. But I think that if we need to, especially for the state of California, land is a premium. Land is a premium. I didn't see anything, and we can look through the documents again, but putting a recommendation about land ownership somewhere, because land is a premium in California. There's just so many people, especially in some of these cities from Los Angeles all the way up to the Bay Area. I mean, just so many people, and land is important. A group of people would be considered more independent with land ownership. So that 40 acres and a mule, I'm for that, folks. I'm for that. All right, look, I got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we'll have more conversation. I'm going to get more thoughts from you folks about this whole idea of reparations, the latest round for the California Reparations Committee, and what do you see happening? What do you see happening? A lot of these decisions, these recommendations will be going up to the California State Legislature in the summer. So this might be happening very, very soon. There's a very real possibility that this could happen. How do you feel about that? All right, folks, stay with us. The conversation continues right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Hey, Black, I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Faraji Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We have been talking about the reparations movement, how in the state of California, excuse me, they have moved forward in approving the recommendations. This is the California Reparations Task Force, and as you can see there, this was some photos from this past Saturday's meeting, their 15th public meeting in Oakland, California, where they decided to approve the recommendations for the use for a number of recommendations around this issue of repaying the debt that's owed to Black people in this country. And a lot of that is not just about money, but it's also trying to change some things within the system. And I want to go back. Let's go to quote 2. I'm going to just throw this back up there real quick, Keenan, for those who are just tuning in. Check out this, folks. This is from the Reparations Task Force. But the task force had previously called for a state office to process reparations. Remember, we talked about that last week. But then they also talked about restoring historical sites, supporting education, and to offer free legal aid and other services. See, this is the meat of it for me. This is the meat of it. So we might be in a situation in the state of California, and the whole country is looking at this, where it's not just about the money. It has to be a multifaceted set of recommendations that is going to speak to the ongoing injustices that are held against Black people in this country. Free legal aid, restoring of historical sites, supporting education, keeping things to kind of open, because I'm sure there are going to be a number of discussions from what does that mean? What does that look like? How does that affect my children? that type of thing. Other recommendations, including updating language in the state's constitution. This is exciting stuff for me, because as much, if we could talk all this talk, but you got to put this stuff down on paper, so that way future generations, future political leaders and social leaders and business leaders can go back to imagine going back to the state constitution, changing the language. Imagine going back to the national constitution, changing the language where it doesn't say 3/5 of a human being, or we're not diminished or relegated to the thinking of men from hundreds of years ago, but we're talking about improving the Constitution. That way we can evolve the very document that we say this democracy is set upon. So I think that is absolutely pivotal. And then once you update the language, you got to let every industry within the state know this is the language. This is where California is going. Removing racial bias and discriminatory practices and standardized testing. We talk about that often. Compensating people deprived of profits for their work, investing in and creating free healthcare programs. Come on. And apologizing for acts of political disenfranchisement. This is not the end all be all, folks. What I'm looking at is the conversation has to start somewhere. And if we are going to apologize for gentrification, apologizing for redlining, apologizing for disenfranchising Black people from voting, apologizing for using strategies and other tactics to keep Black people from voting. Come on, you got to include a lot of other stuff, not just the Porter payments. All right, let me go back to what y'all are saying, because many of you are checking in, and I love hearing what y'all got to say, crew. Sandy, my sister, you said, I'm interested in knowing about the movement. Or Black people buy large parcels of land in Wyoming because apparently it is cheap to make a better life for their family. Well, yeah. There's still parts of California that are uninhabited, excuse me. And I think that's, should be a part of the discussion. Like, what's the land piece? Because, in the rest of this country, if you have access to land, you have a vehicle by which you can build that generational wealth. An acre or two will make a difference, huge difference for a family. Thank you so much for checking in, sis. Laura, you checked in. My sister, you said y'all want to know who got that 40 acres and a mule that went to the Asian buying up property here on American soil, and America is still paying them back when they went there and dropped that bomb. Well, yeah. Well, America's paying them back. And guess what, Lori? America apologized for that situation, right? So we see this stuff is happening. So that's why I don't understand. And Lori, you might have heard this part of the conversation. This is why I don't understand when people act as if, when Black folks talk about reparations, it's unimaginable. It's unheard of. It'll never happen. Man, please. Come on, folks. America has paid reparations before, but we are the one group, we are that one citizen that you got to have a big conversation about, because we built this country. We built this country. Our blood, sweat, and tears is in the soil. It's in the grave sites. It's underneath the businesses. It's in the bricks of the school. It really is under the white of the White House. We built this country. So we can't act as if this is not a bigger conversation. You can't have human rights or civil rights without talking about the rights of Black people in this country first, or having that as the backdrop, or having that as the very foundation of the conversation. Let me go to Truth is Power. Truth is Power, thank you for checking it. You said California is going that way because we voted good people in, and we got people in that would hear our voice, and he put an agenda out for us, and we should be taking advantage, and we should take advantage of it. Vote. Facts. I agree. I agree with you, bro. You got people in, why not? Why not? And guess what? Just because this task force is moving along, there's just something be on the ballot that regardless of who gets in, this thing is ironclad. That's what this is what it, when we're talking about institutionalizing this this movement and the ideas and the recommendations, you got to make it ironclad. So regardless of who becomes governor, who becomes mayor, who gets in the state legislature, it can't be undone without the existence of the California Reparations Task Force. It'll be interesting to see if the task force will continue or how long the task force will continue, because you're going to need a group of people to ensure the progress, to ensure that everything is going according to plan. You know what I'm saying? Generally, task forces are coming together to kind of get things started, and then they're disbanded. But my hope is that maybe, and this is why I think the task force may have recommended this, creating an office that will be responsible for this, because the office from there could be a part of the state government, and essentially that office can handle the ongoing management of the funds, the ongoing management of any type of questions and information, and just making sure that that office is going to hold whatever, governor, administration, whatever administration, they're going to hold people accountable to make sure that folks get what they're supposed to get. All right. Let me take one more, and then we got to take another quick pause. Jeanette, you say, keep the apology and give me tax-paid land that no haters can freely invade. How about that, Jeanette? How about that, sis? I'm with you on that one. Keep the apology. Well, you know what? I do want the apology. I'm not, look, Jeanette. I'm one of them people, I understand the energy. I understand the spirit, because I'm of the same energy. But there is something about when there's a public apology to a people. It's like bringing closure. You know what I'm saying? It's like hearing somebody who has done something to violate you or your family member, and you seeing them in court and you hear the sentencing, and you know what I mean? It's like it has to bring some level of closure, because America never apologized in public. And imagine if the president, if the governor, if some high-ranking official says, we apologize to Black America, or we apologize to Black California for what the transatlantic slave trade has done to you. Now, I know some of you say, well, I will accept the apology, I won't accept the apology, but it has to be made public. It got to be made public. So I agree. We want the apology, and I want the land too. And I want all of these other recommendations. I hope that the state legislature really understands this. Now, here's the thing very quickly, and then we got to end out and take another quick pause. They're planning to do one more meeting before they start putting together all of these recommendations. The next meeting, I'm just looking here, is going to be held on June 29th in Sacramento. So that's going to be the next meeting for the California Reparations Task Force. They will discuss final changes before presenting its proposals to the legislature. So if you're in Sacramento, Sacktown, if you're up in that area, and you had an opportunity to go to the Reparations Task Force meeting, go to the meeting. Get involved, hear what is being said, share your ideas, discuss with people, network, build. But that's going to be the last meeting for this Reparations Task Force before they go to the state legislature and put up these proposals and these ideas on how Black people can be repaired. Even if it's just a little money here, a little change of legislation there, a little change of policy there, it's how do we start repairing and healing those who have been damaged by slavery. All right, folks, we got to take another quick pause. When we come forward, let's talk to our sister, Dr. Bridget, MD, as we get this week's Reclaim Your Wellness. Stay with us. A whole lot coming at you in the next hour of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. Welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. Welcome to our second hour. If you just missed the first hour, make sure y'all check it out and check out all the content as we talked about the latest in that shooting, that mass shooting in Texas, and we gave you the latest with the reparations task force here in California. Make sure you do your due diligence and join us in the conversation. Check it out, share it with your friends and family, and let them know the culture is on. All right, folks, it is Monday. And it's time to check in with our sister, Dr. Bridget Cole-Williams, for this week's Reclaim Your Wellness segment. Take a look. Woo, boy, do we need a doctor in a house this weekend. After the weekend,
bet you did.
After the week, wow. Dr. Bridget, how are you this afternoon?
Great. How are you, Faraji?
I am all good. Always a pleasure to talk to you, to connect with you. I know you got some big conversations and things that we need to keep in mind. So what have you been seeing? What's happening in the medical world, Doc?
Absolutely. So I want to start with where you left off about the shootings that are happening. Yeah. And we talked about this maybe a couple weeks ago about children and how they're dealing with whether it's school shootings. We talked about the young man that, rang the doorbell and how are children responding to this? And so the one thing that I think for this, particularly now in May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month, that we take a minute and take a look at, should children be medicated for anxiety? And so I think it's an important topic that we go over today. And then I want to talk a little bit on a totally different subject about weight loss.
So, okay, let's start with, because both of them are hot topics to me, right? Especially for our people. But let's start with the one that I'm seeing a lot of, which is anxiety. And we talked a little bit. I actually had a conversation with my team on Friday. We had one of our culture crew members, Corinna, and another brother, D'Angelo Jelks, who wrote a book about how to deal with suicide prevention and anxiety, some anxiety. And some of the jewels that came up in that conversation, Dr. Bridget, was the fact of children being equipped, emotionally, mentally equipped to handle all of the changes. Mm-hmm. Because there are so many things that, and we recognize this on Friday, but I wanted to have a deeper conversation with you today as a doctor. We recognize that children are actually going through more than what we experienced maybe 25, 30, 40 years ago, right? Absolutely. Like, we're seeing something very, very different that is happening to this generation. But yet the crazy part is, as much as we can say, oh yeah, children might be under more stress, they might be experiencing more anxiety, they might be, experiencing some more depression, there's still this expectation that they should be thriving, because I thrived. But this was a whole different, growing up in the 80s or the 90s, that's one thing. But growing up in 2010s and 2020, that's a whole different thing.
Absolutely. So things have, like you said, things have changed dramatically. And not only are we expecting our children to be equipped to manage the political unrest, the racial unrest, the issues with the shootings and just leaving your door and what might happen and the instability of our society, we're also expecting the parents to be equipped to deal with this. And I don't think there's enough conversation around what resources do we have to help our children. So that alone, I think, is important because the children cannot be equipped unless the parent is equipped.
So
Right.
are you finding that in your practice and in your talking to your patients, do you find that parents are equipped? Do they have the resources?
Not necessarily. I think that we're kind of used to parents and dealing with the everyday struggles that they're already dealing with
Yeah.
raising their children. But when we look at the comparison of the social media and everything that children are experiencing right now, I think we're simply accepting it instead of saying, how do we protect and combat? And so I always go back to communication is key, finding ways to connect with your child, because even in this, every child is going to deal with this differently. Their exposure to the media is maybe different, even within the household, between the different ages and what they're seeing and what they're talking about in school, they're going to have different experiences. And it's our responsibility as the parent to understand each individual child and act accordingly. So right now, even the rate of anxiety for youth has doubled since 2012. So this is information from 2021, so post-pandemic, and then that is an ongoing, everlasting aspect of how it's switched our culture, right? So this, people say post-COVID, there's no post-COVID right now. We're just at a different phase of it at this point, and how we manage to handle this alters as time goes on. And so 20.5% of young of our youth has anxiety symptoms, which is doubled from years before that. And so how are we managing this is the question.
Man, 20.5% have anxiety problems. So that is clinical anxiety, right? That's like stuff that's on paper. That's not necessarily counting the number of people who may not have visited a doctor and had those, had that evaluation done or had those conversations with their doctor. So it could be a little bit more, especially among children who aren't the most vocal and not going to be the most emotionally open, person to talk to. Am I wrong or right in thinking that?
Absolutely. I mean, when we were talking about these numbers, they're usually based on a study that they have calculated these numbers, but then there's all the people that they're not reaching. And to be quite honest, as Black and Brown community, we go to the doctor or to the hospital for very physical, palpable issues, but not necessarily something that is invisible. And many times anxiety can be an invisible diagnosis.
So let's talk a little bit more about that, Doc, and then we're going to take another pause. But let's talk about this, because I'm hearing there are so many questions that come to my head when I hear like celebrities say that they had a mental health breakdown, they had an anxiety attack, right? Or a panic attack. What's the best definition that we should use to describe what anxiety is and how it impacts us?
Absolutely. So anxiety is really a mental unrest or discomfort that causes stress, feelings of being overwhelmed or being burdened by whatever situation that you might be in. It might be directly related to a specific incident, but many times it's an overall feeling of being overwhelmed that people experience. And when that feeling escalates, people start to have physical manifestations that might be sweating, increased breathing, heart racing, jittery. It's a series of symptoms that people might have that lead to what some people might consider like a breakdown or panic attack or what have you. And so many times when we are seeing our children and they're making their changes in their behavior, many times you go to the doctor and they very quickly will start a medication. And so I think we need to talk about what is appropriate, what is not appropriate, and how best to help our children.
Should medication be a part of the conversation when you're talking about anxiety in children? Like, should I even be a part of the conversation, or are there some things that parents, community members, schools, other folks who interact with children can do to make sure that our children aren't medicated?
Absolutely. So I think the concept, the idea of being medicated is a negative for many of us, right? That we consider this to be a place that we never want no one wants their children on medications if they don't have to be, right?
Right.
To say, should it be a part of the conversation? I think that's an individual choice for every family and every child. And so I'm never going to say it should not be. But I do think that children often need time, explanation, care, connection. And if doing cognitive behavioral therapy in itself can be as effective as medication for many, and that we need to be more mindful of using therapy, using meditation, creating more support in the community. And then if needed, medication might be an option as well.
That's really good to know. Really good to know. All right, look, we're going to take a quick pause, folks. When we come forward, we're going to continue the conversation with Dr. Bridget, MD, for this week's Reclaim Your Wellness segment. And I want to get your thoughts on this around children and anxiety. Rodney, I see you checked in, bro. Good to hear from you. You said you've been dealing with anxiety for years as an adult. You can't imagine how hard it is for kids to deal with this. I can't either. And I think that a lot of folks have to understand the impact that anxiety has made. I'm gonna share with you some stuff around racial justice and how that has played on Black youth, because just as much as white youth and other youth have been experiencing anxiety, we know Black youth are right there, right in the middle of all of the madness and chaos. Not only are you talking about the anxiety of getting older, the anxiety from going from one school to the next, or moving into one neighborhood into another neighborhood, you're talking about the anxiety of being Black and how that's more pronounced now than we've probably seen in recent years. So we'll have more conversations. Stay with us. You're tuned into The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. We've been talking to Dr. Bridget Cole-Williams, MD, for this week's Reclaim Your segment as we talk about anxiety in the next generation and how this is one of the big issues, the big conversations that we can't stop talking about, especially within Black America. And I'm so happy that Dr. Bridget is bringing this into our minds and helping us to understand some of the complexities around this. Doc, again, thank you so much. As always, I think you're providing some really good insight into this as we're asking the question, should children with anxiety be medicated? Now, you're saying, I asked the question, should be completely not a part of the conversation. You said, well, we can't totally eliminate it. That
Absolutely.
sometimes it may be necessary. And I know that, and you're a Black woman, you're a mother, along with being a healthcare professional. But you also know that the relationship that Black folks have with the medical industry is a dysfunctional relationship.
Absolutely.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So we become the numbers for being over medicated. We become the numbers for, and I've seen some of these reports about just in terms of prenatal care and some other medical issues. Like, we are overdiagnosed. I remember reading a report just last week, where an article, it was saying, making a point that when Black folks go into the doctor's office, and it's automatically, and this has been based on a history, we automatically have been deemed schizophrenic,
mm-hmm.
or suffering from bipolar disorder.
Right.
And boom, it becomes like this, it's written, and there's nothing that can change that.
And now you have to carry the stigma of those diagnoses, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so the same thing I feel like with anxiety, especially with Black youth, right? The Black youth already get it painted with this broad brush. You come into the doctor's office and boom, you got anxiety. You need medication.
Mm-hmm.
And people are pushing back on that, because how do we trust that is going to be the right diagnosis? How do we trust that the medication that we are receiving will actually be effective? I mean, there are a lot of questions around it.
Absolutely. So I think, and we've talked about this before, that when we go to the doctor and we see a doctor that emulates us in some way, that looks like us, that is from our neighborhoods, that is a part of who we are, we trust the system a little bit more, right? So we, first of all, have to have more clinicians that we relate to so that we can trust what we're experiencing, number one. Number two, we have to have some knowledge of how this visit should go. Because if it's a quick visit with a quick prescription being written, something has gone wrong. There should most likely be lab work involved. There should be some suggestion of therapy. There should be a much more involved conversation than it looks like you have anxiety and let's give you medication, because sometimes this might be a thyroid disorder, right? Sometimes this can be anemia. That might, young girls with heavy periods might have anemia and might look like anxiety. So we need to say, what is the differential diagnosis before you quickly assume that it is anxiety? But to be honest, in this day and age, there is a lot of reasons why young people might have anxiety, and that we need to act accordingly so that they have a better experience. So not only is it about, do they have this diagnosis? How do we treat? What type of therapy should they get? Medication, or whether it's cognitive behavioral therapy, and finding therapists that look like us as well. And I think 2 weeks ago in my Instagram, I listed different resources of finding therapists that look like you, right? But we also need to be even more cognizant of, what does a child look like when they do have good mental health, when they are well adjusted? Because I think sometimes we look at the teenage phases and the difficulties that they might be going through, and children go in and out of different behaviors. And sometimes we are not always sure, how well is our child adjusting to life, and when is it actually becoming a problem? And so when we look at a child, let's say the youngest ages of like 3 to 5 years old, we're looking for a child that tends to be affectionate, okay? Tends to be resilient, has a lot of positivity and curiosity. That is a healthy 3 to 5 year old. And so as much as we talk about what it looks like to have mental health issues, I think we need to even work harder to see, what does a healthy child look like? Because sometimes I think when you're busy and you're a parent and you're moving, sometimes we don't know what healthy behavior looks like. And I can see age groups and what behaviors are a well-adjusted child. And I can list those on the Instagram later today as well. But I want us to be not only aware of what it looks like when a child's having a problem, but I want you to go home tonight and look at the we'll go through the different age groups. And does your child have good, well-adjusted behavior? And if they don't, then let's look at what else might be going on.
I love that, Doc. I love that, and you know that is so real that when we look at children, especially from you said it's from starting at the age of 3,
right? That
is so real because when I look at my daughter and I'm like, man, she is everything. Then I got to keep reminding myself, like, bro, she is 3.
Right. I've been caught saying, why don't you just grow? Oh shoot, you're only 4 years old. Like, you know, because you're rushed and you're anxious yourself and you're stressed yourself. And sometimes we need to look at our children's behavior and say, this is what a healthy child looks like. And if you're not seeing that behavior, then let's start talking that when we talk about Mental Health Awareness Month, it's not just the downfall of negative experiences and diagnoses of mental health problems, but Mental Health Awareness Month should also be being aware of what good mental health looks like. And not only should we be cognizant of that for our children, but we need to talk about that for ourselves. What does good mental health look like?
Because we could pass on, and I think I've read this somewhere that, you know, we could pass on some level of anxiety to our children by how we're handling them, right?
100%.
It's like, you know, you want to say it again?
100%. It's nature versus nurture, right? Is their anxiety coming from within, or did I teach my child to behave in an anxious manner?
Ooh.
And I've seen it. I've seen children be around anxious adults and very quickly adopt the behavior. And then saying, wait a second, you know, some things happen in this interaction, and that we need to make sure that our children stay in a safe and happy place.
Man, that's a hell of a thing when you pass on anxiety to your children.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because here's why I'm thinking that, Doc, and then we're gonna get some comments from the crew. The reason I think about it is I think about it like the same way we do fear. Like a parent's fear can become a child's fear, right?
100%.
You know what I mean? And I think about that, you know, like my daughter loves jumping off of high places. My fear is like, what? What are you doing? And she's like, nothing, Dad. You know what I'm saying? And so,
but like the whole
how do you get the proper balance for that? Because you don't want to teach your children to be afraid or always be nervous and anxious at everything, but you want them. So you're trying to get them a proper balance. How do you establish that?
So I think you have to look closely at your own behavior and realize when you might be acting out of stress and anxiety versus what is actually logical and in place. We want our children to be smart. We don't want them to be fearful, right? And so I've seen quite often when children are around like highly germophobic adults, and then they're afraid to touch this, they're not doing anything abnormal, right? But if you teach your child fear of everything around them, I mean, keep in mind, and going back to, you know, the show earlier, racism is taught fear. And so we can teach fear, and nothing is more provocative and lasts longer in a person when we're trying to convince them of something than fear tactics, right? And we see that throughout history. When you teach fear, it is hard to undo. So we want to be careful that our issues do not become our children's issues.
When you teach fear, it's hard to undo.
Yeah.
You're taking me to church today. You're taking me to the church. When you teach fear, fear is hard to undo.
Yeah.
Damn. And that's across the board. Fear
Generationally, you teach fear and it continues and it continues. So we want to be, the best thing you can do for your children is be healthy yourself. The best thing that you can do for your children is be able to identify your own issues and be able to communicate them, because it doesn't mean your issues are going to go away just because you're a parent. But if you're able to communicate, hey, I have a problem with this, but that doesn't have to be your problem, then the child's able to recognize the difference. And it's okay if people have problems. We work through them. That's part of the human condition.
Right.
But it is very important that we don't pass along our own fear issues. Many times we have children where, we want them to be successful, but the fear of going out into the world, many times we end up holding our children back. Many first-time college students, many times first time in their family, end up going home because family pulls them back out of fear of what they're experiencing, what's going to happen, are they going to leave all of their own issues and then that child just comes back home. So we can't let our issues be our children's issues.
That's heavy. That is heavy, Doc. First, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's talk more about this anxiety, children, fear, passing these things on. Also, let's talk about weight loss, how there is one pill that's out there trying to get people to lose their weight, and it may not be doing that. Go figure. Go figure. Folks, we'll continue the conversation about your health, your wellness with this week's Reclaim Your Wellness with Dr. Bridget when we come forward. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, you're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We've been checking in with Dr. Bridget, MD, for this week's Reclaim Your Wellness segment as we talked about anxiety and the next generation and all that it encompasses. For folks, Doc is breaking it down. I mean, this piece around about anxiety being passed on, fear being passed on, it gives us an insight as to how serious of influence we have on our children. And Doc, I want to bring you back into the frame. When we talk about these things, you know, it makes me do that soul searching. It makes me go back into to remember what I said to my children yesterday and the day before and all of this thing. Because I think that for a lot of parents, parenting is not an exercise that you can put on autopilot. You have to be present. And I know it might sound crazy, and I know it's hard to do, trust and believe. And I think everybody here understands what I'm about to say is hard to do. But I think it's necessary that we should try to be present in every moment in interaction with our children as much as you can.
Absolutely.
Right? To be present. And it's hard. I mean, trust me, it's hard. And once you get to like the end of the day and your children are jumping around or they asking you questions or the demands are still being required, asked from you 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, you're like, bruh, I don't care what you do at this point, as long as you get out my face. Mm-hmm. But you have to, we all have to be present. We have to make sure that our interactions are healthy. We have to make sure that if they are unhealthy, that we take a moment to self-reflect, to think about, well, where did this come from? Why did I handle the situation this way? Why did I respond that way? And so it requires you to be very, very intentional with your parenting. And I think that's one of the big lessons I'm learning from our chat with you today, Doc.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to be intentional. You want to be present and taking the time. And we've spoken before that if you're having uncomfortable conversations, sometimes having something that is a little distracting that can ease some of the discomfort is a great idea. So I've talked about having the talks in the car because you're both facing forward. It's not as intense, but it gives you an opportunity to talk and they can't really get away either. Right. But the other thing I would say is enter a little bit of humor into the conversations.
But suppose you don't have a sense of humor, Doc.
What's that?
Suppose you don't have a sense of humor. Suppose you're just one of those parents, you're always everything. I've come across parents, they especially black folks, you know what I mean? It's it's always serious. It's always about the people. It's always, and it's like, damn, man, cut it down a little bit. Just turn it down.
If that is your issue, then that's what you probably need to work on. But if it's at all helpful and that's hard for you to be vulnerable, because sometimes humor makes you be a little bit more vulnerable and open and, willing to say some things that might be, a little bit on the sillier side or what have you to ease the moment. There's a lot of different conversation type card decks that are available for families or for parenting. And sometimes it might be like having one of those decks on the table. And if you can't put down the phone and turn off the TV and everything else, maybe at the end of the night, you just pull up one of those cards and you force you and your kid to sit down and do one card. And it might be them. Sometimes what I think kids are missing these days are really knowing who their parents are. Knowing that they have the same human experiences that they are going through right now. And so whatever it takes for you to let that guard down, to be that human and be present and be observant.
Yeah.
What we need to do, because kids are in a different place than what we grew up in.
Yeah.
And we're struggling with what we're going through right now. Right.
Right.
And so taking a little time and checking in is a good thing. And there's so many different ways to do it. I would love to talk about that tonight on our after chat. There's so many ways to check in with your kids. And but it starts with checking in with yourself.
Oh no, I love that. I love that. And the fact that once you do check in with your children, like that level of conversation, I know for me it did. This helped out tremendously. Once I talked my problems or my situation and my anxieties over with a trusted adult when I was a child, it made me feel better. You know what I mean? I know it's kind of like after school special, but that's what we saw on them sitcoms when we were growing up, right? They have that, especially like Carl Winslow sitting down and, what's going on, son? And you know what I mean? Right. It's a cheesy moment, but I'm telling you, cheesy moments are absolutely essential when you're a parent. And absolutely. I've had cheesy moments with my son and it makes a world of difference. It doesn't completely eradicate everything, but it at least brings you a little bit closer. Like it teaches your children that if I communicate, if I'm able to articulate what's going on in here and in here, and someone listens to me and we have a conversation about it, I'm going to feel better. Yeah. So I love that wholeheartedly.
I honestly, I feel like we have missed something that was using television, an educational tool. I think we're missing a little bit of that right now, where sitting down with your kids and watching Blackish and having the conversation on the subject. Though it's great entertainment, it's family television, but it's also an opportunity to say, hey, what do you think about that? This is what happened. You can when it becomes uncomfortable, you can utilize those type of things. Before Blackish, there've been other shows, but of course the Cosby Show was famous for that. It was built for that.
Famous for that. Right. Right.
And I will tell you, with my kids, Cosby Show was, had been gone, but I got the DVDs and we sat there and we would go through shows, and they loved seeing themselves on, on a show that they could relate to. And after that, it went into black, and I don't even know what it is now, but
what is it now? What show were we? That's a good question. That's a good question.
I don't know what it is now.
I don't. That's a good question. Like, what black family shows would you sit down with? I see Blackish. I see Grownish. That was another one.
But that's
Grownish.
almost over.
Right, that's almost over. That's a good question. Crew, what y'all think? What's a black family show out there that y'all would kind of sit down and agree upon? That's interesting. All right, so look, let's talk about the other piece, which is something around. This is another problem, of course, within Black America, which is weight loss.
Absolutely.
And you wanted to talk about this this one medication that's out there that's on the market right now. Which one is that we need to be mindful of?
So if whether it's through the rumor mill or social media, Ozempic is getting a lot of attention right now. Okay. Ozempic is an anti-diabetic medication. So it's used for type 2 diabetics, but at higher doses, they have found it's good for appetite suppression. And so it's gotten a lot of buzz. You will see that there are a number of quick doctor related, make an appointment, get your medication apps that are available now. Meet with a doctor today. I think Weight Watchers adopted a doctor line. And so you can not only join Weight Watchers, but connect with a doctor and get this medication. And it seems to be everywhere. So I very obviously was curious what was going on with it and what did we need to know. So keep in mind, from a 2022 State of Obesity report, Black adults have the highest rate of obesity in the US at 49.9%. Now, I have some thoughts about that as far as how those numbers come together, but I do think that there is an issue when we're talking about not just obesity, but the results of obesity, which is hypertension, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and high cholesterol. So we need to be mindful of how we're treating our bodies and making sure that we're taking good care of them. So the Ozempic is at the higher dose. It's also called Wegovy, and there's some other companies on the market that are making something similar. It is an option for suppressing your appetite and losing weight. And keep in mind, there might be some pills out there, but the majority of them are being sold as injections, self-injections. And so the concern that I have is when something gains this level of buzz and popularity, how well is it actually working for us, right? So some of the things that I want people to be aware of is that, yes, it can bring about weight loss, but it's maybe, and this is still significant. So at the half dose of 0.5 milligrams, maybe average of 8 pounds. At 10 milligrams, you might be, at 1 milligram, you might be losing 10 pounds. The placebo had you losing 3. So comparing that, now that's actually a good number. There's been good results with it. However, just like any other weight loss medication, when you stop it, you very well might gain that weight back, right? So you have to put into place the behaviors and lifestyle changes that will lead to long-term weight loss. But they also found that people are taking it who are losing weight rapidly might also be losing muscle mass. And so with that being the case, you have to be mindful of not just a high protein diet that you might be doing with this medication, but also doing resistant weight training. And I don't know if that information is getting out there.
So this medication is has a lot of side effects, it sounds like.
Actually, overall, it's actually pretty safe as far as side effects. If anything, if you're taking it and you're losing weight rapidly, or you decide, as we do, you're doing one thing. Once you say you can't have a lot of something, what do you want more than anything is, more sugar or whatever it may be, that you might have nausea or vomiting if you're having a high fat, high sugar diet with it.
Right.
So like I said, you want to have a high protein, probably on the lower carb side. The issues are not so much that there's so many side effects. I think the issue here is whether you might be losing muscle mass, that you have to do the exercise along with this. And that in using Ozempic, I am not anti-Ozempic whatsoever. I think this might be a really great option. But I guess what I want people to be aware of is not the miracle drug, right? That we're always looking for the miracle pill that you lose weight, you don't have to do anything, it's just going to fall off. You're still doing the work. It is an appetite suppressant. And if you're not careful, yeah, you might have some issues with it. If you're having, if you're dealing with obesity, it might be an option for you, but make sure that you are well aware of its use and how best to utilize it so that you are successful and that you're able to make sure that you're not getting some of the side effects that might occur.
So, I mean, and very quick before we take our next pause, is that, when you're saying that your folks are still doing the work, I mean, that's the real crux of weight loss, right? Creating a diet plan, creating an exercise routine, because I'm thinking that even if you take a medication like Ozempic, like, what do you take that for the rest of your life? You know what I mean? Like, to sustain the weight loss? Or is it really just about like, okay, you take this medication for 30 days and then boom, you kind of work on your own from that point forward?
Absolutely. It's going to take a while for it to even kick in. So, yeah, we can talk about it.
All right, absolutely. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, more conversation about Ozempic and weight loss. And I'm going to share with you what 3 Black men are doing to change the culture in media. And it's not just talking about Brother Roland. So we'll have that conversation up next. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We've been checking in with Dr. Bridget, MD, for Reclaim Your Wellness this week. And Doc has been telling us about Ozempic, a weight loss medication that has some impact that will have some impact on our bodies. And Dr. Bridget, I want to, just be clear that as much as there are weight loss medications that's out there and that's on the shelf, that it still comes down to the person making some changes. They still got to put in, as you say, put in that work,
right?
Whether it's exercising. And one thing I've learned that when training in the gym, they said that 80 to 90% of the real training starts in the kitchen.
Right.
So Ozempic is an option, you're saying, that may help. Janelle checked in and says, doesn't Ozempic have some competition?
There are other weight loss medications. Ozempic is interesting to me because, to be honest, despite what we shared, it has less side effects than a lot of medications and less dangerous. It can actually be cardiovascular protective, and because it's a diabetic medication as well. So it can lower your risk of heart attack and stroke in people that have type 2 diabetes. So there's a great option here. There's a lot of other medications that are much more expensive, and Ozempic is one of the GLP-1 medications, as glucagon-like peptide medications are out there. There are definitely some other ones that are also people are starting to utilize for weight loss. I just want people to realize in using this, and I do believe that a jump start in weight loss can be incredibly motivating, but you're saying that a great deal of weight loss is in the kitchen, a great deal of weight loss is in your mind, right? Because if you don't change the way you think, behave, look at your body, look at food, look at activity, then weight loss is simply fleeting, and the weight will always come back. Right. So I think this is an interesting option for people. You're seeing it more and more. So I think it's worthy of a conversation. But be mindful that, and you don't have to be a diabetic to get the medication. But you do want to, and it can be incredibly expensive as well. So it's something to look at. It's something that's being offered pretty much in so many different weight loss areas. If you're having issues with weight, it might be something for you to consider. But you do want to be mindful and also realize that nothing is a miracle pill.
Absolutely. Absolutely not. Doc, we got a few moments left, and I want to give you an opportunity to talk about the after chat for this evening, to take the conversation even further, the conversation around adult mental health in children. And some of the other things that you want to discuss. Just put it out there, Doc.
Absolutely. So we can continue our conversation about weight loss and all the different aspects, which I think, for years I did a lot of weight loss medicine. So I'm happy to always have that conversation. But I think not only talking about children and anxiety, but I really want to dig even further into what good mental health looks like in children, and the different age groups and what to look for. So we'll do that at 5:30 this evening, Eastern Standard Time, on Instagram Live on Dr. Bridget MD.
There it is right there, Dr. Bridget MD. Folks, y'all can check her out every Monday here on The Culture for the Reclaim Your Wellness segment. And of course, make sure y'all tune into her after chats, where you don't know what might be said or who might jump on. But guess what? Doc gonna keep it on track and keep the conversation real. Dr. Bridget, thank you so much for the great work you're doing. And of course, thank you for being so good for the culture.
Absolutely. Thank you, Faraji.
You're welcome. All right, folks, we got to take another quick pause. When we come back, I'm going to share with you what 3 Black men are doing to change the media game. Stay with us. It's The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back. Just wanted to bring you up to speed because there seems to be this growing trend, folks, of Black folks getting involved in media. Now, we have talked about how some of our millionaires and high-profile individual celebrities and business people have come together to try to buy a sports team. Well, now it seems like the trend is now let's shift from sports to now let's shift to media outlets. And this is the case that we're seeing right now with a couple of brothers who are deciding to pool their resources to take advantage of a big opportunity. First and foremost, Paramount, one of the big production houses in the industry, and has a global impact and global reach. They have decided to let go of some what they call non-core assets, folks. That's the business term that they want, non-core assets. And essentially it leaves spaces like BET up for grabs. Well, 3 black men have decided to launch their bid for BET. You're talking about Shaq, 50 Cent, and writer and director and creator Kenya Barris. Now, according to the reports from the Griot, the sources familiar with the bid say that the trio has joined forces with Group Black. I love the name of this group, Group Black, which aims to invest in and expand Black-owned media companies, private equity firm CVC Capital Partners, and Authentic Brands Group, which develops and licenses brands to retail operators for the potential business move, according to the Wall Street Journal. Bids for BET Media Group, which owns the VH1 and BET cable networks and the BET Plus streaming service, reportedly are due later this month, with support from cable tycoon John Malone. Robert Johnson established BET in 1980. It was the first national television network aimed primarily toward Black viewers. Viacom, now known as Paramount Global, purchased BET in 2000 for $2.3 billion in shares and $570 million in existing debt. Now they are trying to do their due diligence to get rid of BET, and you got these 3 brothers that are looking to buy it. Now, also along with buying it, you have other black men who are planning to put a bid in. Byron Allen with his media company, and a couple of other folks are doing it on the other side as well. So this is interesting. Very, very interesting. Tiana, you checked in and said BET is a non-core asset. What the hell? I mean, look, folks, when BET first started, and here's why I wanted to bring this up. BET first started, it was revolutionary. Y'all remember the beginnings of BET under Bob Johnson, right? Revolutionary, Black programming, Black talk. That's where we got to hear Black news in a very, very authentic, in a very, very unfiltered way, right? There was Black news. I remember Ed Gordon and Jackie and many other voices that we probably haven't heard of. I think Tavis Smiley was on there. Everybody, I mean, just seems like BET was that space. But then BET did get bought by Viacom. BET became a different station. It became a different channel, a different network. The programming was still directed towards Black folks, but it became different. But it's interesting to see now that we are in this space where now, when we're talking about the culture or shifting the narrative, there's more interest in creating or buying or having control of media spaces. This is why Brother Roland continues to be an advocate of supporting Black media, right? Because this is the direction, this is the wave of the culture right now. If Black folks don't have media outlets to tell our story, to speak our truth, then guess what's going to happen, folks? It will be drowned in all of the other stuff. If we're not having conversations that are relevant to us, if we're not having discussions that are relevant to us, if we're not acknowledging when things affect us, then how can we truly say that we are, quote unquote, being healed, or we're becoming more independent, or essentially becoming more critical in our thinking, when we don't have a place, a space, a platform that's going to allow us to show our brilliance? And so, something that was on my heart as as I was just thinking about my birthday this past weekend and all of that stuff, really supporting Black media. And I'm going to just say this as we close out. This is one of the most important institutions in our country, this space called Black Star Network. Because I don't know about you folks, but this is the absolute most perfect time for us to have our own space to talk about the issues that are most important to us, to come to a consensus about the direction that we want to go in this country. And I know we don't all believe the same way. Our experiences aren't the same. Our jobs certainly aren't the same. And even though we may be Black on the outside by skin color, it doesn't mean that we all think the same way. So I understand it. So that's why this is important. That's why this is important. And I'm keeping my eye out on these ideas of media spaces and media outlets and platforms, because it's important for us to tell our story, to have conversations about the issues, and most importantly, to be able to show the world a different way to see the struggle, the joys, the triumphs, and the wins of Black people in this country. So whoever gets ownership, or who can get part ownership, or whoever can really change the media landscape, whoever can have the power of the story, that's the one who really wins. So it's going to be interesting. I'm going to keep my eyes out for Shaq 50 and Kenya Barris, and Byron Allen and others. But the point is that we need Black media and Black media professionals. If you listen to very quickly, if you are in an area that has Black-owned radio, Black-owned publications, Black-owned TVs, whether it's public TV or whatever the case may be, support them. Support them. Support them, folks, because it is those spaces that need to be supported. We can't talk about, oh man, what happened to the Black-owned stuff, when we had an opportunity to support Black-owned things, Black-owned media operations, and we didn't. So we definitely got to put our money, we got to put our time, we got to put our attention on supporting Black media now like never before. Could you imagine going through all this stuff in this country and we didn't have Black Star Network? We didn't have a space to talk about culture. We didn't have a space to talk about the impact of women with our new show, The Frequency. We didn't have a Roland Martin Unfiltered that kicked us off and had become the trailblazing program that it has become. Or we didn't have a talk about a balanced life. Could you imagine that? No, I couldn't. We need this more than ever before, folks. So again, big shout out to all the brothers and sisters who are trying to figure out the best ways to get our platforms into the hands of our people to tell our stories so we can have a different future. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. I thank y'all for tuning in. Make sure you support us here at Black Star Network. Your support is everything to us. So please don't forget to check us out at blackstarnetwork.com. Go to the website. You can certainly support us financially. You can share the content, follow us on all platforms, and make sure that you do your due diligence of supporting Black Star Network. Also follow me on social media at The Real Faraji on Instagram and Faraji on Twitter. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank Dr. Bridget for checking in, and I thank my team, and I certainly thank you, crew, for being a part of the conversation. Stay tuned. Up next is Roland Martin Unfiltered. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong, stand for what's right while being yourself in the process, and God willing, we'll talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Peace.